Hi everyone, Sherry from Granny's Sewing Room. Welcome back. I've had some requests to start doing the second part of the little girl that stopped crying video. So I'm going to kind of throw a little bit of it together today. As you all know, I'm telling my life story and I'm trying to leave this legacy behind for my kids and grandkids. So someday when I'm gone, they're going to know who their mom and who their grandma really was, because they really don't know. And that's the reason I'm doing it, is because I didn't know my mom. I didn't know anything about her. She hardly took pictures, so I didn't know my mom. And I don't see my kids or grandkids that often, and they aren't going to know me. But I want them to know where they came from and who started it, you know, who was part of their makings, who's part of that. So the little girl that stopped crying is me, and I'll pick it up. And my siblings, I won't say names. I can't tell you their stories because I don't know their stories. They've never talked about it. They aren't doing what I'm doing. They don't bring it up. One sister says she don't even want to open a can of worms. So I know they each had their own painful experience, but that's theirs to share. And I can only share mine and the times that are the great memories I had when I was with them, because there were times I got to see them and stuff. So I'm going to probably drag this out for a while as my memory kind of relives some of my childhood. And to pick it up where my mother had left in an ambulance and never came back home. She had died, and pretty much our father died at that same time. He took the deep dive into the bottle, and us kids were bounced around. And I probably won't have the order of it where I lived when I lived, and I won't say names of people that I lived with, just the experience that I endured or I lived through as I was bounced around. So first of all, I want to kind of put it in contents of why this little girl stopped crying. And I laid in bed last night and I thought, well, how can I describe how I feel? I even feel this today at times. And my best way, I was laying in the dark, and I took my hands and I covered my eyes, and I kept, and I could see it, and it looked like a big dark room I was in. And I just kept looking and looking, and it just stayed dark. And I felt like I was this little girl in a corner, cuddled up, huddled all together, waiting for someone to open that door and say, "Here I am, honey, come here." Never happened. I remember crying and crying, waiting for someone that I knew I loved to open that door and from that dark hole I was in and say, "Come here." Now, this story isn't intended to be sad, or it's just intended to tell you the kind of person your mother became is because of some of the situations that's happened to her life that was out of her control. Now, there are situations I created my own problems, and I can own up to them. But these are ones that it's just out of our control, and you just got to keep going. So this little girl that was in that dark room and nobody came to get, she remembers living with family and her father's friends. And family first kind of all stepped in and tried to take each kid. There was 6 of us, and each of my mother's siblings and my father's siblings were raising their own kids at the time. And it was not easy for someone just to come and take more kids on and support and try to fit you into their life. So I have no ill feelings toward anybody. I I know it's hard. It's very hard. So one of the memories I had shortly right after my mother died is we all lived in, back then it was a little town, Bennington, and we lived in this house. And my oldest sibling tried her hardest to keep us together. She did. And her and my father, I don't believe, got along much, but that's just more going by hearsay than knowing, really. So they didn't get along much, and but she tried. And my father was an alcoholic, so it didn't make it easy for her or any of us. And I don't remember that lasting real long, but one incident I want to share because my siblings will remember that. The big thing in town is a truck of pigs got loose, and that was the most exciting things. Pigs were loose in the town. So that was pretty fun. And we had dirt piles and cornfields to go play in and stuff. And so that memory is very very sketchy, but I do have that memory, and it was fun. Then the next memory I have is my older sister was gone. Well, actually, the two older ones were gone, and I don't remember seeing them very much. Us last four siblings, let me see, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, the other four siblings moved in with a cousin, I believe, and stayed there. And she tried, between her and her family, this would be on my father's side, she tried. I remember Easters, well, one Easter in particularly, because we didn't stay anywhere very long at all. She dressed us up, and we had the little bonnets and, you know, the gloves. And so I remember getting to experience that once in my lifetime, being all dressed up for Easter. I remember my mother's brothers. One brother flew in. He was lived out of town and in the service, but he flew in and bought us all new clothes. So that was, I have that memory. I remember us being where my grandma, her mother, lived, up in her apartment, and my grandmother was a waitress, and she just couldn't take on 6 kids, but I believe she did her very best. But we were in her apartment living. I do not remember where my older siblings were. I don't even remember where my youngest was, but I do remember being there. And I remember looking out the back window. She lived on the top of the apartment, and looking out in the backyard and seeing them all out there by a fire early in the morning. And she's telling me to come down, and we go to breakfast. So I don't know if there was a lot of my siblings with me at that time. Life back then is very, very, I don't remember a lot of it. It's kind of like I don't remember being a little kid. I don't remember having the experiences of a birthday party or a wonderful Christmas, or, you know, I don't remember being loved. I don't remember ever getting hugged, held on your lap, or all that was gone. And crying never brought it back to me. So when I cry, I become angry. To this day, I don't put a lot of pictures out. Too painful. I love pictures. I love to look at them. But if it brings back a pain, I block that pain and close that door. So there's not a lot of pictures. I'm the kind of person that if you bring me too much pain, you're out of my life. I say I can't take no more drama, and I've got to eliminate that because I cannot handle pain of some sort. I don't understand that. But anyway, this is part of helping me grow through this. So, but anyway, back to the memories of the different places we lived. I remember being with my sister's, or my mother's sister, for a short period of time. I remember having to go to some lady that would babysit me in the morning or in the daytime. I don't know if my aunt worked but I remember having to take a nap on the floor and while she watched soap operas. And I never watched soap operas my whole life. I hated soap operas. But I have that memory. I remember that lady taking me to a grocery store and it was dark outside. And they ran into the grocery store and left me in the car, and I was so scared. Back into that room of darkness. And the only thing I remember in that back seat, scared to death, is this grocery store had a big owl on the roof, and the eyes would blink, neon lights would blink, and I was petrified. Petrified and scared, thinking nobody's going to come back out of that store. I'm here, I'm left, what do I do? That was a very scary time for me, and that's right after my mom died. These are incidents that I remember right after she died. I remember starting school, and I was living with my aunt, my mother's sister, and I was in kindergarten, and it snowed, but I remember coming home and walking home to her house in the afternoon, and she always made me tomato soup with a little dab of butter and milk in it, and a grilled cheese sandwich, and then we would take a nap. That's an awesome memory. I have awesome memories of my mother's sister, and I love her very much, but I remember that. I remember, and I'm not, like I say, this isn't in the order. That was probably after we went through a couple of rougher houses. I remember going to a house, and I had my 4 siblings, the 2 older and the younger one. And this was family members, and they tried to put us up, but they were kind of, I don't know if there was something mentally wrong with them or just cruel people. But they would try to make us take, and we must have been there for a little while, they would make us take these big purple pills because they said we had worms. And I can remember kind of spitting out purple in my mouth. I remember when they didn't like something we did, they locked us in a cellar. And the 4 of us was all in a cellar one night. And me and my younger sibling, I'm sure, was crying. And my, there was 4 of us, and I had 2 older siblings. And the oldest of the 4 of us, she waited until she comforted us the best she could. And she waited until that family went to bed and fell asleep. And she got us out of that cellar. She called my mother's sister, and I just remember them coming and rescuing us from a cellar, a cold, dirty, dark cellar where the door opened up from the floor type of cellar. That's how I remember it. Very scary, very dark, but we were locked in a cellar. And we left that house after that, but remember taking pills for having worms. Remember her feeding us only lima beans to eat. Won't eat beans today, but that was a rough memory. Let me see. And then I did go to kindergarten, like I said, with my aunt. I don't know where the rest of my siblings went. They were gone, and we were separated most of our childhood lives, most of us. We had each other here and there now and then for a month, a year, and then get separated again. But there was one time when I was just starting kindergarten, this couple couldn't have a baby, and they took me. And beautiful home, beautiful couple. They just showered me with the kind of love that they could, you know. I was a very shy, scared little girl. I didn't accept people hugging me and kissing me or whatever. But I think they tried. They would take me to the store, and downtown was just a beautiful store. I mean, you'd see Santa Claus that dressed up for Christmas. It was really like in the movies. And if anything I wanted, the man would buy me anything. I remember coming outside and riding the little horsies, and they tried very, very hard. And she would curl my hair up and back then in rag curlers, and real nice family. And I know they offered to buy me from my father, and he was going to sell me, and it was for $500. And that might sound cruel, but that probably was my dad thinking, this is a better life for her. At least one of them's going to get out of here, you know. And they were going to take me and move me to California. But I just was too sad. I just couldn't get past the hurt and the sadness. So they went and got one of my siblings to try to raise, and so I would have someone comforting me. And it was the third oldest sibling. And she wasn't having it. She wasn't moving. She wasn't having it. She wasn't nothing. So she wasn't staying too long because she just wasn't having it. She is very strong-willed and has her own way of thinking, and it wasn't thinking of moving with these people or staying with these people. But then my second to the oldest sibling got wind of it, that my father was going to let these people adopt me and pay him for it, and she stepped in and wasn't going to have it either. So I left that household, and then I started bouncing from household to household to household, to person to person to person. And it got, some places got pretty bad. My father would go to the bar and find friends that would, hey, will you take my kid on for a week? I'll come back and get him. Or I don't know what he offered, but he had friends that would take us for a week or two. And he had one friend that took me and brought me home, and he had a wife and one daughter. And that friend did not turn out to be a very good man. He did things that it's not nice to do to little girls, even his own little girl. And I was there for about a month, I think, and then I was moved out of there. My memory, whether it's true, one of my sisters told me it wasn't, but my dad found out what he was doing and came there with a gun to kill him, but I guess that didn't happen. But I'm going to go ahead and hang on to that belief. My father was my rescuer, and I'm going to go ahead and believe that. So, but anyway, we moved to another house. This house, I got to have my younger sibling with me, and he and I lived with this one lady, and she was pretty cruel too. We were never allowed to eat on a table. We had to always eat on a piece of paper in the corner of a kitchen. We were forced to eat a teaspoon of Vicks. You know, I don't know if it was every night. We were pretty old to be making us take a bath in a kitchen sink while everybody was coming and going, or we had to do that. I had to wake up every day and braid my hair for school. I remember that. This lady was a pretty rough cookie, and we lived there for a few months. I think we lived there on and off 2 different times. Then we went to another lady's house, and she had, I believe, 6 kids of her own, and she took 4 of us the younger siblings on. And I remember her taking her own kids and me and my youngest sibling, and we had to go to bed probably at 6:30 at night, and we all had to go into a room, and we were locked in that room, could not come out until morning, until they unlocked the door. There was only 2 twin beds in that room, and there was her, I think at least 5 kids, and then 2 more, my sibling and I. And we could look out the window and see the other kids outside playing and stuff. And but we were locked in that bedroom, and that went on for quite some time. Her husband was very nice at times, but could be very cruel too. You know, So that was one incident. Sorry, the phone rang, but I probably should end it here and start it up again in another video. So you guys have a blessed day. Has anyone told you you're special today? Because you are in God's eyes. Go out and do something creative and just live life. So bye everybody. See you soon.